Here we go, it's the kungfury audio commentary, and I'm going to do a little bit of an Easter egg hunt to try to spot as many references as I can. One thing I just noticed, just queuing it up ready for this commentary, it says play right at the very start at the top corner of the screen. This is one thing as well, just remind me of Police Academy 4 when Arnie and Kyle get stopped for skateboarding. Obviously that bit didn't happen. One thing though, I won't go as far as to say it's an anachronism or something, but it's in widescreen, and even though I've got loads of VHS and widescreen, I always think of widescreen VHS as being a relatively new thing, but you could get widescreen VHS in 1985, so it's what I thought was really funny about this, and I literally only clicked in about it a few minutes before doing the commentary, but that arcade machine saying "fuck you," it instantly put me in mind of Stephen King's cameo in Maximum Overdrive, where as he's using the cash machine, what says the temperature above him says "fuck you," and then I thought, wow, somebody gets killed by an arcade machine. So I don't know if it's a direct or deliberate reference to Maximum Overdrive, but instantly put me on that. The way that the pram's on fire there, it's such a crazy little touch. And even this, the way I've only seen this film twice, but the way the arcade machine puts money in himself or herself, yeah, so I thought that was interesting. And this was another thing as well, the Time magazine covers on the wall. That's one thing I always remember from like 80s films like Rocky and things like that. They would use Time magazine, and that's how I kind of, if I ever saw Time magazine in real life, I always thought, oh, it must be kind of cool if you've got on the cover of Time magazine. I only ever see Time magazine now once in a blue moon, but we crushed the phone there. That's one thing about this film though as well, and don't get me wrong, because I was like in two minds about this film when I first saw the trailer, because obviously it was really hard not to get bowled over by the trailer, because so many great moments in the trailer. Oh no, the dog! There's so great many great moments in the trailer, and obviously I'll touch upon these scenes as we go through them. But sometimes I think, and obviously, the more I watch the trailer, and I've since watching the film, you can tell that the affection for the 80s is so strong, obviously. But at the same time, I think there's this sort of, this one thing I thought was brilliant, because I still use VHS, and for the most part it's pretty rock solid, but for some reason I put a really old battered copy of No Surrender 2 in my video the other day, and it put loads of dirt and crap on my heads, and for about a day my video was doing this all the time. So that kind of and it looks really good as well when people do that normally, like when they did it in Grindhouse a little bit, the Tarantino Robert Rodriguez movie, and you think, sometimes it looks a little bit off, but that looks pretty naturalistic. Yeah, but I think with the 80s, when people do 80s parodies or 80s reference, or things were referenced in the 80s, I think sometimes people think it's so much crazier than it actually was. And you watch a lot of 80s films, and the clothes are quite ordinary, a bit boring if anything, and most things are just quite normal. It's only when you like literally cherry pick and whack it all into one thing that you get this, like, both wearing fluorescent clothing and big hair and stuff. And it obviously was like that, but I think if you just go through the decade, it's not 100% quite like that. And I know for a fact, I know the whole film is 30 minutes long, and I even do this if it's like a 90-minute film or 2-hour movie. But the first couple of minutes of a commentary was crazy, and I know for an absolute fact that when I get to the end of this commentary, there's going to be stuff I wanted to say or wanted to reference, but I can put that in the text element to the site. What's really funny though as well, because like I said 5 seconds ago, I still use VHS, but I've been meaning to do it for ages, to sort of get a new film and put it on VHS, like a brand new movie, and this is the perfect example. I've noticed other people doing covers online and things like that, and I kind of love how it's got that creativeness, things like this. You look at the poster for this film, it's probably one of the best posters I've seen in the last 5 years, and it's inspiring all these other people. Like, I'm doing a commentary, I've seen other people doing covers, and it's really, really cool, people talking about it online and everything. It's really awesome. One thing as well, what I quite like about this film, and it was what I was expecting, it's not just using overt references. It's kind of, like say when the people time when Hitler time travels at the end, spoilers obviously, it's exactly the same as in Terminator, the lightning and the way the litter's blown around and things like that. But I kind of love how, like I said, like saying that, like, you know, if you go through the 80s and sort of, if you literally just pick all different things, you can create something like this. And I kind of like how every single element, like they're just tying that headband, it's like, oh, we've got like Rambo. And then there's an 80s Jackie Chan film, one of his first attempts at breaking into America. It's called The Protector by James Glickenhaus. And I literally watched this a week ago. I kind of think I forgot this film was coming out, and I watched The Protector. And then literally, I've literally got the VHS just across from me there, and it's like, wow, it's so much like this film. It's, you know, it's like, obviously without the dinosaurs and things, but even this, it's got an intro, and so many things about this film. It's what is so good, like say, considering, like, you know, it's 30 minutes. There's so much in this film, and so many little details, and so many little references, and like, yeah, this, like when he said he got struck by lightning and got these kungfury powers. How many 80s films where, you know, some like in short circuits, number 5 got struck by lightning. There's one part where he says about triangulating his position. I always think, oh, the only time I ever think of the word triangulate is in short circuits. Then there's a Mac behind him that looked exactly like the Mac that Newton Crosby and Ben use. So it's like, oh my god. And then so I think that's what's interesting about this film, that, like, say, and they're like, I was smoking, and I always say this on all commentaries, but to me, if you see somebody smoking in a film, it's kind of you can tell the filmmaker's got some kind of balls or some kind of personality about him, and just little moments like that was like, oh, really kind of caught me attention. And another thing as well, there's a poster on one of these walls here that says "cop" there, just behind the police chief. And I always think of Police Academy 4, because the Citizens on Patrol program, you see the words "cop" everywhere, and obviously it's short for police. Oh, that was another thing as well. Like, I know if I just have, like, remembering it very slightly wrong, but one of the main, well, one of the guys in the band Lonely Island is named Andy David Sandberg. And the way the writer director of this is David Sandberg. And I was like, wow, that's a weird coincidence that, you know, two people doing very similar things with the exact same name. Like, you know, it's like, it's like it's like wait for a buzz. And that's another thing I always think is really funny about the 80s. The number of times I've literally lost count when people are like, and obviously this is like, it's not exactly the most realistic film ever made, but I love about when people say about the 80s, oh, it was before mobile phones, oh, it was before CGI, and then you watch something like this and it's like, a mobile phone, and it's like, oh, well, they did exist in the 80s, but kind of not really, like, and this idea about shooting through the phone, though, is crazy. And that's the thing about this film, where I think, like, like how sort of sometimes restrictions and things, like there's some stuff that I'll have to try and get a good pause of that scene there with all those things pinned to the wall. I bet there's loads of little Easter eggs and references in there, and that was one thing, because I think I clicked on the trivia on IMDb, and I think I clicked on like maybe one or two Reddit posts, but I didn't really want to find what other references people have found themselves. I mean, people have probably spotted all the ones I've spotted, but with having like a big respect for 80s culture, I wanted to sort of try going blind and sort of try and spot as much stuff as I could off my own bat. Like, what's funny in this scene, like there's a Sinclair ZX Spectrum, and what's always really funny, because I always think of the Spectrum as being sort of, quite sort of UK based, or so it seems funny seeing it, and like I think the main guys are European, so it kind of makes sense. Who created this film, because I think they are. That made me laugh as well. Their kung fu DNA. It's like, what does that even mean? That's so brilliant, and that's one thing about this film that I really love, is that, like, even though I love big budget Hollywood films, and I don't care if they spend 300, 400 million on a film, what Hollywood do with their own money is their own concern, as far as I'm concerned. But I really like the fact that when you've got people who've got to be careful with their money, or they haven't just got money to burn, they come up with really creative things like Hitler. I know there's been a few more recent parodies of Hitler and crazy versions of Hitler, but I think it's got to be just in terms of performance and just in terms of characterization, it's got to be one of the most original versions of Hitler that I've ever seen. And the thing is though as well, and this is like, and I mean this with the utmost respect, but a lot of people could watch this and say, oh, it's a little bit silly here how they come up with the idea for time travel instantly, like, oh, let's use a computer algorithm and go through time, and you're like, oh, okay, it's a little bit silly, and obviously it is, but Back to the Future, amazing film, don't get me wrong, one of the best films I've made. How does Doc Brown come up with the idea for time travel? He says he slipped off his toilet and came up with the idea for time travel. Is it really any different? It's like, but there's that spectrum there. I mean, it's like I was, gonna, and that made me laugh. It says E equals MC squared conversion, and then a bit in a minute you see E equals MC, and there's a number 3 instead. Because I think you did, maybe I just imagined it. Try and figure out what the computer was there. I'm normally quite good with old-fashioned computers, but even that, like just say the restrictions that sort of. That ZX Spectrum micro drive there, like you had to be pretty rich to get one of them. Excuse me. Yeah, oh no, I got this ready. Oh no, yeah, it did go up to 3 hours. Because I was going to sworn. And what's really funny about this though, because what's funny though, to a lot of people, or say maybe half of the people that watch this probably think, oh, remember those old CRT tallies, and oh, remember old computers, remember V8. Excuse me. Remember, oh, there's a Sinclair tape there as well. Loads of Sinclair stuff, really cool. But yeah, but a lot of people think, oh, remember all this stuff. I still use this stuff nearly every day. And I kind of love this though as well, because I think sometimes, like I say, with some films you'll get like, sort of they try and figure out how sort of to go through time, or I just like the fact that skateboarding through time while standing on a computer. There's just something quite sort of just magical about that. What's been, like I say, I literally got this little notepad, and I was I think one of the police chiefs mentioned Viagra, and I don't think that was like what's funny, because that actually got me there, because that was a bit like Robocop when Murphy first dies and sort of and then he comes back as Robocop, and just for a second I thought, oh, what's happened there? But that's a really great shot, because this is one thing I won't mind, just if I see a proper making of, or like, because these shots look like wherever these were filmed. If this is like some kind of CGI composite or something, or if this was done on a computer, this is some of the best CGI I've ever seen. Yeah, but that was another thing though as well. I did genuinely think, and I think I mentioned it on the video I did about the new Batman video game Arkham Knight. That's about but the missions on that where Scarecrow's like 100 foot tall, and I think there's very few filmmakers or creative people that have captured it, but they have in this when Thor arrives and he's like huge, and the perspective is so brilliant. What's really cool about this though as well, because again I know a lot of people do things ironically, and they proper think a lot of people on the internet are like, oh, look how cool I am because I'm being all meta, and you'll see like a picture of Robocop riding a unicorn or something, or you'll see a picture of some crazy Chuck Norris riding a shark in space or something, and they are funny, but there's something so brilliant about this, like where he's literally talking to somebody from the past, and he's saying like, yeah, I'm a cop from the future. Like, everybody's like, what would she know what a cop was, and why she got a gun? And the one thing as well, when I very first saw one of those miniguns in Predator, when Jesse Ventura was using it, and I found out they were called miniguns, I was like, well, that's a stupid name. It's the biggest, most powerful gun you can hold in your hand, and it's like called a minigun. Like I said, let's just going through some of my notes, because I know I'm going to forget everything, but everybody's name comes up in text. I can't think exactly if that is a deliberate reference to something, but there's something quite funny about that all the sort of main characters, it's just like, oh gosh, I stopped for a second, but the name just comes up, and it's like, I'll see what they do. I mean, this bit's brilliant, and this is real. Like I say, this was one of the trailer shots, and no wonder they got investors just from this scene alone, because I think it just shows so much creativity, so much sort of intelligence that, to make Thor just that big, and a cop talking to a Viking woman set in the past. I mean, just to come up with that just as an idea, if it was just this scene in itself and it was 30 seconds long, it's brilliant. What's really funny as well, because there's one part where Thor says, "Stop, hammer time," and I can never 100% remember, but as far as I know, it must be 88, 89, 90, and it's really funny where there's this weird crossover thing where a lot of things the 80s gets blamed for, and I'm doing air quotes when I say that, but things like, if you ever see a compilation album for 80s things, they nearly always have a Rubik's Cube on there. Well, the Rubik's Cube was invented in 1974, so, and then loads and loads of times you'll see people say, oh, that Vanilla Ice, even though I love Vanilla Ice, but people, that Vanilla Ice was rubbish, the 80s, huh? And it's like, no, that was 90s. So it's kind of like, there's this like weird thing where, like I said earlier on, that there's so much 80s stuff that people go, oh, the 80s, and, you know, they'll pigeonhole all these things for the 80s. Like I was saying about mobile phones, when people go, oh, mobile phones didn't exist in the 80s. Oh, no, they did. And, you know, people play fast and loose with it, like, but I'm terrible for stuff like that myself. I mean, I'll think, like, I saw Wilson Phillips Hold On the other day on TV, and if somebody put a gun to my head and said, what decade did Wilson Phillips Hold On come out? I'd be like, oh, it's an 80s song, but it was like in a 90s countdown, so it's like, you know, what do I know? Well, that's another thing as well, when he passes here, this phone, the 555 number, see what they did there. But one thing as well that was really kind of cool about this just reminded me of Robocop, when you see, like, you know, fake hot by Yamaha, not fake hot, but, you know, replacement hot by Yamaha, and, you know, the 6.0's SUX, it just put me in mind of Robocop. But like I said before, this is one thing I kind of love about this film, and I guess it's kind of having your cake and eat it, but there's nothing wrong with that. But one thing I do love about this, how it's like I say, they deliberately are pulling direct references to things, like, say, like, you know, it's like they got like Tron arcade machine in there or something, and then it's just like, here's Thor, or here's, you know, or like something that's a little bit more subtle. I thought this was funny as well, because I think this is another thing that's hard to get right, is subtitles. I think sometimes they just don't look right, or they, and I thought I expected them to come on for like 2 seconds and go off, and I quite like how this scene is relatively long for a film that's on for 30 minutes, including credits. And one thing as well, I mean, I love, you know, all these 80s one-liners of, like, you know, when people say, like, you know, stick around and all that kind of stuff, and, you know, I let him go, and all the not just Arnie said these quotes, but yeah, you know, James Bond said them all the time, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. You know, better make it 2 hours instead of 1 hour, and all that kind of things. All these little quips, but I love this one where it says, "Where did the tank go?" They get crushed with the tank. Says, "Thank you." But my favorite, what would be really interesting about this, like I say, I've tried to sort of stay as much spoiler free as I could until I watched it. I didn't want to really get other people's influences, especially before I did the commentary and things like that. But my favourite line in the whole thing is, I love to know if anybody else has picked up on it, but right near the end, when he goes back to the future, see what they did there, when he goes back to the future, and he notices the SWAT sticker, and he says, have I seen that symbol before? And I don't know why. That just works to me on so many levels, that, like, you know, what kind of person would, if you couldn't recognise that symbol on any level, and then, like, you know, wow, I should have, like, you know, like, it's just, like, so brilliant, like, you know, the fact that he, you know, he did just fight, like, you know, 300 Nazis or something. What I thought was really funny, though, and don't get me wrong, like I say, this is, you know, I feel like I'll tell myself, like, it's just nitpicking into it, but this film, I think, is brilliant, and even though, you know, I was, like, say, any bit of 80s stuff, I'm well up for that, but this one sequence here, I like it, and I think it's good, and again, you know, it's what you're going to do, you know, if you haven't got 10,000 extras, you can't really interact with them, obviously, like, that'll be all duplicated, I assume, within the computer, but the way all those guards are just walking around in the background. But again, it's a scene that where I don't hate that scene by any stretch of the imagination. I just think it's the one scene, and this is not an easy thing to say when you're watching a film with a Triceratops policeman, Thor, and a man that can turn into a computer robot, when Hackerman does it in a second. But this scene just seems, I don't know, it just, I can't really, because, but like I say, the fact that why I picked up on why I don't, it's got that video game-ness to it, where it just, like, when you get the same people in the background just repeating the same few frames over and over in the background, or, you know, things like that. So it kind of gives it a sort of video gamey quality to it. So it's kind of, like I say, it's what, like I say, this is one thing I do love about films like this. And again, like I just said, it's like having your cake and eating it. But one thing I do love about films like this, though, is where you know, you can do something crazy in a good way, and it's like, you know, you think, oh, that, like say a Triceratops policeman. I mean, that's just what, and then his voice, it's like almost like a posh British guy or something. But then like you can have like just, you know, 10,000 people in the background for no reason whatsoever. It's like brilliant. I think it's in a second, but there's some music that just reminded me of Blade Runner. But like I said before, though, what is great, even that's very Mortal Kombat-y thinking about it. Like I say, he's got that sort of, like, just reminds me of Mortal Kombat, but even that, how it sort of, you know, creates that swastika on there. And that's one thing as well. And don't get me wrong, I know when you're a major Hollywood production and you're spending 200 million, if I was always you know, gutted, for want of a better word, that like in Captain America, instead of Nazis it was Hydra, and you know it makes sense within the Captain America storyline and everything. But I was like a bit like with smoking, that like, you know, when you watch Raiders of the Lost Ark and they use Nazis in that, yeah, I mean, you know, the Nazis, you know, well, they were Nazis, you know, not exactly the best people in the world, but like one of these things where, you know, imagine if Raiders of the Lost Ark didn't have Nazis in it, it was something else, but you could tell they're basically Nazis. And it just, yeah, this is the Blade Runner music. I mean, that little touch there from doing those punches, like, so, I know something like, it's just such a weird collection of images. I mean, I can't believe this. We've literally got 10 minutes to go, and that's one thing about this film where, you know, it just rattles along so much, but I couldn't get over that. Like, again, this so great. I mean, as much as I love Thor, the Chris Hemsworth, Kenneth Branagh Thor, I mean, literally is one of my favourite comic book movies of all time. So much fun, so watchable. This is almost a better interpretation of Thor in terms of, you know, he really feels like a god, you know, huge and got all these powers. And then, like, the way this dinosaur, you know, it's like when the dinosaur and that gold eagle are like sort of pouring at each other. I mean, that's such a, you know, it's real. And again, like, you know, just what a, like a great selection of imagery. I mean, this is, as a 40-year-old adult watching this, this is brilliant. Imagine watching this when you were like 10 or something. Just, it'd be mind blowing. But what's always really funny as well, because I'm so sort of, I'd say, invested in 80s culture, that like I just take all the stuff as, you know, like say that Commodore, like that, he's got like a tape deck on his waist and it's very Commodore 64-y, and I just take all this stuff as read, that like, you know, it's like, oh, it's 80s, and you know, obviously it's like, you know, like a tribute and all that kind of thing. So, but to me, it's like, this is because I probably watch or listen to something 80s every day basically. So to me, this culture is, you know, not alien to me. I grew up in it and I'm surrounded by it all the time. Like, you know, watched, you know, bought an American Ninja box set the other day on Blu-ray and stuff, and all these different things and that. So I say watching The Protector literally about a week ago. So all this stuff to me is like just second nature. It's almost like, you know, like, and literally, I mean, it's hardwired in my brain. So I'd love to sort of know, say, how old, even people older than me, if that's possible, or people like, you know, I wonder how they take this. Is it literally just like, is like a, like, seems something like David Hasselhoff? What's really funny, because I think a lot of people think, oh, David Hasselhoff. I love David Hasselhoff. I mean, I adore Knight Rider. Love how he cameoed in the more recent updates, you know, continuation, because that's what it is. And you know, I love Baywatch and things like that. You know, and even, you know, people sort of take the mick as he's singing. But I've been looking for Freedom is a great song, and that there, I couldn't believe this when I was watching this yesterday, and I thought, oh my god, there's a mask. It's the intro to Mask, like where this cartoon's into a helicopter. And it's like, oh my god, they literally just copied Mask. It's like, ah. It's like, I love Mask as well. But like, those vehicles the Cobras are riding on, I can't 100% place it. I think it's very similar to the ones in Masters of the Universe. But again, though, it's that thing, and that thing about 80s culture that I really like. And obviously, anytime you generalise, you're wrong. But one thing I really do love, and it does seem to me, that any people that are really passionate about 80s culture are normally really nice people, or, you know, they're really interesting people. And I think so. I remember Adam Green, who directed Hatchet, excuse me, said once, he said, at any time, if you see an Adam Green fan or a Hatchet fan, they're normally pretty sound. And one thing I've noticed, and Kung Fury is a perfect example, if you see anybody talking about it on the internet, like say if anybody's reviewed it, or let's say these people doing these fake DVD covers and things, they're nearly always like really sound people. Like, you know, it's like, I think it just, it's just an interesting sort of thing that sort of, oh, that was nothing as well about Cobra. If you think about it, There's Cobra Kai in The Karate Kid. The bad guys in Action Force or G.I. Joe, depending on which country you're from, they're called Cobra. It's like the Stallone Cobra. And that's another thing as well. You think the character's named Kung Fury. And I don't know if I just mentioned this or not, but if you think that, you think, oh, who'd be named Kung Fury? But you think the main character in Cobra is named Marion Cobretti. That's a real name. I mean, that's a great scene. When I said as well, my favourite line is, "Where have I seen that symbol before?" I mean, to me, that's like. But this line, it's a close second. It looks like we finished each other's balls. I mean, that is brilliant. I mean, again, it's things like that where writing the script, in essence, is free. Basically, you don't need no special effects or anything. What a great line. Oh yeah, one thing as well I thought was, and like I say, it's like, such a thing. It's like there's no pleasing some people. One thing I thought would have been brilliant. One thing I've noticed from getting loads of second-hand VHS and ex-rental VHS, that just before the credits come on, a little line where hundreds of people have stopped the tape just comes on, and it's happened on so many tapes. If they'd have done that on this, it would have just took it over the top. And I didn't mean it to be a pun, but yeah, why not? But yeah, I mean, it would have just been the icing on the cake for me as a big credits fan. And that was nothing though as well, watching the credits to this, and I noticed the soundtracks on vinyl. I mean, that's a purchase that is going to be winging its way to me. That's a weird thing to say. And scenes like that, though, I think I'm going to say before, but any scene where, like, I know obviously that was Hitler, but like, scenes where, like, when Jason's trying to protect his face in Freddy vs. Jason or Number 5 in Short Circuit 2, I'm always like, he's thinking, oh, they try and not die.
What happens now?
And this is really funny as well. There's so many films and like there are so many TV shows like Murder She Wrote and things and like that. I mean, I was thinking, has a dinosaur ever laughed on film before? I was thinking probably Land Before Time or something like that. There must be a scene where the dinosaurs, but that even that, live action especially. I mean. What's funny though, because the Lamborghini Countach, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a pretty damn cool car. I was always a Ferrari Testarossa man myself. A car I'll never have. Yeah. This is one, I did see somebody mention this on the internet. It's obviously 2001, but it's interesting because that's not a direct 80s reference. And again, I kind of like that like, again, like I say, it was sort of, it wasn't just purely 80s stuff. It kind of, is a mishmash of all these different things. And again, one thing I loved about this as well, where they just throw the ghetto blaster on the floor, and it's like, but they're an Uzi as well. I just think of like when I think of an Uzi, I nearly always think of like things like Operation Wolf or Terminator. Again, just something as simple as somebody holding an Uzi. It's so loaded in there with like, there's so much more going on there. I think it's just you're such a product of that time period that even just thought of using an Uzi. And funny enough, I think somebody on Reddit, I read a thread the other day where somebody said, "What's your favourite scene just before it cuts to credits?" And if you think about it, though, I mean, a resurrected time-travelling Hitler flying on a gold eagle flying towards the camera. I mean, that's a pretty spectacular way of ending a film. Oh my god, that's. I'd really like to know if anybody's picked up on that line, because I just think it's so funny. And as well, I read, I think, I may have just made that up, but this is true. This is, here we go, cut to credits. Like I say, if they could have just put that line in, just the picture getting funny just before the credits. But like I say, yeah, apparently, I'm sure I read that the director of this film got David Hasselhoff come to his house to film is seen. I might maybe recorded the song there. But how awesome is that? If I can ever get David Hasselhoff to come to my house, I know I've either kidnapped him or there's been I've had some success in my life, because that's the if I ever get if I ever get to meet David Hasselhoff, I'll probably cry. But even this, just I'm a big credits fan anyway. But the fact that this song is playing, and they get references to things like "No Retreat, No Surrender," which just even just that line, how great is that? So 80s, just that do or die spirit. No retreat, no surrender. But then you've got David Hasselhoff singing it, and then you've got things like it'll say 8-bit consultant or arcade machine consultant, and you're like, you're watching something really cool when it's like, it does that. But yes, he's so awesome. Like I say, and I know for a fact there's going to be certain things I wished I'd mentioned or should have mentioned, but I did my damnedest to try to spot as many Easter eggs as I could. Like say, I think the thing is, I think certain things there's probably like the angry police chief and things like that. There's probably 100 iterations, is that a word? Or variations on that theme. So to sort of spot them is going to be so difficult. Or spot them all or reference them all, because it could be one of them things where there could be a million of them. But yeah, this is one where it says the kungfury original motion picture soundtrack is available on vinyl, download and streaming services. I mean at first I thought it was maybe a joke, but if it's on download and streaming, it's probably true. No dinosaurs were extinct to the making of this movie. Thanks for watching, everybody. Kungfury. That's the logo again. Moving Sweden.